What's up guys, it's Hard Driver and welcome back to my studio. I'm gonna be posting some more stuff on YouTube in the coming months. I'm really excited to get back on it. We're gonna kick this off, this first video, with a walkthrough of the Qontinent Anthem. So I'm gonna take you inside the Ableton project. I'm gonna split it up in a few parts, because otherwise, I know myself, I'm gonna talk a lot, so it's gonna be a very long video. So today we're gonna start with the leads and melodies. I think there is a lot of interesting stuff to explain there. I'm a bit rusty with this whole YouTube thing, so if you have any feedback, drop it below. Enough talking, let's get into the project, Running Wild Forever. Let's go. All right, so this is the project. That actually sounded like, all right, so we're gonna tell you a little thing we got going on over here. You might recognize that. This is the Ableton project of Running Wild Forever. As I told you, I'm gonna do the lead part today, which is this section. And let me just play the melody first. It's basically an 8-bar melody with a small variation the second time. Actually, the whole track started with this melody on piano, even before I had the vocals. So the vocals were written after that. But this whole... that was basically the first thing I played, even before I knew that I was going to do the anthem. So I just had this voice clip called Idea for Anthem or something, like Anthem Melody. And then I got the request to do the anthem, and then I was like, whoa, I already got a cool melody, I think. First, I thought it's maybe a bit simple because it's a very easy question answer, but then I started layering it with harmonies and stuff. And then with the vocals, then it all gets more meaning. So the lead, this is the lead. Little side note, it might sound a little bit different in the final release on Spotify. This is like all still live because I think I did a little bit more compression on it or something. So I had to go back a few projects to see what I actually did. This is the whole lead. This is the way it's built up. Top lead, harmonies. This is just a little filter thing that I didn't even use. So let me just delete that. And then one group with chords. I see my project is a bit slow. I have no idea why, but we'll manage. Let me go into the top lead first. Let's play it on its own. To me, this is a typical Hard Driver top lead. It has always this screechy tone, quite aggressive, but also, in my opinion at least, pretty clean sounding, but a nice screamy, aggressive vibe to it. It's built up of quite a few layers. I'll just go through them one by one. This is the Osiris, I never know how to pronounce it. It's just basically a saw. The base of hardstyle leads, I guess. This is an empty MIDI track we don't use. I sometimes make just an empty MIDI track below my lead. So I can just, if I'm going to change a melody, then I can just move that MIDI down, mute it, and then I always have it like close by so I don't forget it. This is a face plant. This is like a screamy sound. Pretty basic sound. It's just saw wave with some tiny sync on it, and then it's FM modulated with a noise oscillator, I guess. Yeah. Also a very typical sound. You could easily make that with Serum or Silent. I was just fiddling around with Faceplant at the time, so I used that one. This is a Spire. So just a very simple preset, actually. It's just a square with some distortion, Works perfectly in hardstyle leads. Yeah, it gives a bit more feeling to it. Here I have a Virus B, which I back then, it's not working at the moment because my MIDI, long story short, my MIDI doesn't work at the moment. In the final project, this lead was already bounced. So that was on this audio track. So here I didn't record the final version yet. But that was also just a pretty basic saw, but with that fat Virus B sound. So that's currently missing in what you're hearing. It was more like to make it a bit more full. It was not really changing the tone. Then we have a Serum. This is just a low saw, and now I hear it's not even on legato because it's not doing the pitch bending correctly. Yeah, I probably at the time was like, oh, it needs to be a little more warm and full. So I just added a very simple low saw to it. It's maybe an interesting thing to mention. I'm usually very simple in my way of thinking. If I'm like, oh, it's missing some fullness, I would rather just add a very simple layer to it than, yeah, go all crazy with, oh, we need some saturation in the low end and we need some harmonic exciting in the mids. I'm just like, okay, just add a simple layer under it. Boom, problem fixed. Move on. That's a bit my philosophy with everything. Up next, we have another Spire. Also more of a screechy layer. And then here we have 247, which is indeed of my track Hardstyle 24/7. The screech layer. So very filthy, but to be honest, I think this layer is in all of my tracks. Yeah, let's say 95% of all my leads, I just use this layer. This is really the character sound. You can easily modify it by just playing with the filter. But it kind of blends all together. So top lead were all those layers. The way this is built up, if you have no clue about Ableton, this is the whole group. So everything under this layer, you can see this line here. This is the group. So I make a subgroup for the top lead. This just has some basic EQ. As you can see, I'm well aware that I'm clipping, but I mean, it's hardstyle. We're clipping everything, so I don't worry about that. Here is another EQ that I just did a simple high cut. So I sometimes use a filter, sometimes I just take a EQ8. It's just as fast. Up next, we have some harmonies. And I might play them together with the top lead. I'll turn them up a bit so they are a bit too loud, but then you can hear the effect. And you can see in the middle or the second half of the melody, I'm gonna add another harmony. Let's play it right away. Some notes are actually the same as the top lead, so they are not like harmonizing, I guess. But I felt it just needed to add a little layer on some parts, not on every note. So let me turn that back. I think it was -11. So yeah, harmonies I think are really important, but you should definitely not overdo it because it can also distract the listener. If they are too loud, then yeah, you have your top lead that people are hopefully singing if they like it. And then you just want to use those harmonies to give a little bit of extra feeling to it and not distract from the lead, from the melody that is the main thing. So that's always a thing you have to balance pretty carefully, I think. Then we have the chords. As you can see, the chords I did some more processing on. There's even some things that I turned off that I'm not using anymore. So this is the chords group. It's all saw waves, but it's just a whole bunch of them. I might do another video where I can explain in depth this whole setup with the racks and everything, because I'm sure there are people watching that don't even know how Ableton is built up if you're maybe using some other software. So I'll get into that in another video. But this is just basically, call it like a mini group with 2 serums in it. So I'll just go one by one. And then I can solo that one again inside this group. So it's a high saw chord, a low one. And these are all just really simple inits. I'm just doing the same thing basically. I just want to build a fat saw. I'm not trying to really reinvent the wheel there. Here's some more saws. Yeah, this is literally the same. Now I'm playing it back. I'm like, yeah, that makes no sense. But I'm like, it sounded good, so yeah, just leave it. June 3, very good synth for big leads. Also just saw waves. Then another silent for more saws. And then I have, did I forget something? Yeah, just some EQing on it. Extra chords, because we didn't have enough. I thought 7/5 wasn't enough. So I added some more. And this is called Wavetable, which is a stock synth of Ableton, which I really like because it can be very simple, but also very complex. But in this case, I like to just add, like I said, simple layers. As you can see, no crazy stuff going on, just some low cut, just some gain. I don't know why I gained it there and not the channel. Sometimes I'm doing weird stuff. On this group, there is a OTT. Just some corrective EQ, just removing some muddiness. I don't know if you can hear it in the recording, but there's definitely some dirt in the low end that we don't want. Auto filter, also again, a stock plugin. Just a soft clipper that I did myself. This is just a saturator, and then the LFO tool is just for the visualizer. That was my solution back then. So this is just chopping off the peaks of the whole synth group. So it's a bit more under control. See if I turn it down, you get a bit more peaks. And if I turn it up all the way, it's just cranking up the input, turning down the output, soft clipping it. If you do this too loud, you get a dirty grain that you don't want. So this is just a simple way to just chop off peaks. Use that a lot. This is a reverb that is not used. No idea why it's there, but I'll just leave it for now. Oh, I'll delete it. And then I have a shifter, which is the frequency shifter of Ableton. Again, stock plugin. Works very well. I probably use that back here. Or maybe in the mid-intro somewhere else. But this is basically a frequency shifter that works very well. So that whole stack together is the lead. And let me see the processing on the whole thing. We start with a UAD 1176 that I'm a bit surprised. I don't even remember that I used it because usually I'm switching up things all the time. So I used this a lot back in the day. So I probably was like, oh, there's a Virus B. And then I was maybe, oh, let's use that old 1176 on it. So very simple compressor. You just crank up the input. This is the attack, release, and the ratio. Gives a very nice tick to the sound, a nice transient. It's compressing pretty aggressively, but as you can hear, it still sounds really natural by just giving a nice transient to it. Then I have some more EQing. As you can see, the spectrum is looking already pretty clean. So this was definitely not how I intended it. This is probably by me tweaking all the time, looking at this spectrum, because I'm always like, if I have to do too many crazy corrections here, then my lead is just out of balance. So that's that. Again, soft clip. I already clipped the chords, but of course now I get this top lead on top, harmonies, everything is stacking on each other. Just want to get that under control. So again, I used my my soft clipper to keep it nice under control. So that is again just some very subtle controlling of the peaks, I would call it. Then this is my climax verb that I've made in my climax anthem and I still use. This is by far my favorite reverb. It's the UAD Lexicon 480. This is just a setting I use all the time. I don't really adjust it, just some EQ. And then I sidechained the reverb with the whole lead. Yeah, that's just pushing away the reverb when the lead is playing. You dial them in so it's nice, gets a nice pumping effect when the lead stops. So you can see the lead coming in and that's pushing away the reverb. Then an echo, if I just turn off the reverb. Also very simple, this is also a stock echo from Ableton, but I have a lot of crazy delay plugins, but I basically use this one the most. It's simple, it does what I want. I can always put something behind that I can use to manipulate it even more. As you can see, I put a little reverb on the delayed signal. There's just a filter on the delay. It's 1/4 ping pong. So nothing crazy, not too long of a feedback. And then I use the ducking. So this is basically the same as that compressor did on the reverb. So it's just ducking when it gets the input signal, so it doesn't get all muddy and everything is going through each other. So that's echo or delay and reverb. Then this is sidechain drop. This is just being triggered when it's on the drops. So now nothing's happening. I usually use two different sidechains, one for the stab parts in the break. So when you get the there's like a different trigger. Here you can see a little MIDI track that I use. I can explain how I do the triggers maybe in another video, but this is basically triggering all the shaper boxes in this whole project. That to me is the most tight way of sidechaining and the most easy. So that's being sidechained on the drop, obviously. This is just a utility for volume and some mute stuff. Probably in the mid-intro I automated the mute to make some hard cuts. Then there is a soothe that I use. That's just taking away a little bit of resonance. I can show you what it's taking out. So it's very subtle, but it's an awesome plugin that I use a lot. A bit less now, there's Pro Q4, but that's not in this project yet. And then there's just the good old Valhalla room that is probably being automated at the end of drops. So here, or in the build-up. Creating some extra tail, I usually just throw that on the whole lead. So that is basically the whole lead stack. Then, very important is my lead background group. I will play that on its own. This also consists of layers that I use a lot. These are a bit of like my standard tools. I can also do a video on that maybe, like my standard toolkit that I use in every track that you probably won't even notice, but it really fills up the lead and it just works. And that's why I use things. I'm always a bit like, yeah, this is simple, this works. should not change it. Offbeat chords. I probably use them as offbeat chords in the drop. See, they're on the offbeat. So this is just a clone of the chord stack, of the melody of the chord stack, and then just long notes, basically. Just clean chords. This is a preset. Then I have the HD Magic Organ. I like my names. Nemesis, great plugin that I use a lot. Organ, very good. And I think an organ is just a sound that really works to give warmth. Just got to be careful with the overtones because they can be a bit sharp. You see, there is like a lot of resonance going on, so you got to be careful with that. But in the end, I think an organ is a very nice instrument. Okay, it's a digital, but still, the tone of organ gives a very nice, warm feeling to leads or pads or stuff. HD Omni Choir. This is my choir that I also use in almost every track. Probably recognize that now that I mentioned it. Omnisphere with a lot of processing. This is without. Then I have OTT. My way of thinking is just I need to slap this choir down. It just needs to be very tight and flat and aggressive sounding. So OTT is then the go-to plugin. A big reverb, some EQ, and then another OTT. And as you can see, this is already in a rack. So it was like that. So things I use a lot, I make a rack for it. And they are on my Stream Deck, which I will explain in another video because I think that's very interesting. What I usually do is I load this rack and I just turn this knob for the amount of reverb. Sometimes I don't even touch that. And that's what I, again, mean with working simple. This is just my choir that I use a lot. And sometimes I do a little change to it, but usually not. It's not the reason. This is just part of the toolkit of the background of the leads. So that doesn't have to change for me that much. Then here we have a little ARP. Again, Serum with just a little in it. Just playing a very simple, it's just following the chords and then just playing a very simple little thing in the background. All right, and then here we have, it's called tegenmelo, which means counter melody. That's Dutch, which is just playing a little accent melody, I would call it, in the background. And with some chords, it will make more sense. And how I usually make these things is just when the melody is playing, I'll just jam on the keyboard on top and then I'll try to find something that sounds logical and it's not too difficult. And as you notice, it's just playing a lot on the offbeat. So it's just filling up the background a bit with some nice vibes. So that is the whole lead background group. Then there are some crowd noises that I feel always work nice in anthems. This is a crowd noise that I think is from Soundrush from our track Last Night. Thanks, guys. As you can see, I pitched it up 4 notes because it has a bit of a like a note. So I pitched that up 4 notes to make it fit a bit better. And then you see here, Fire to the Fuse chants from my DEF CON gathering. soundtrack. They are like contact samples that I always use. That's that. Pretty basic. Some cinematic drums that I will go into a bit further when I'm doing the breakdown. Yeah, just your standard drums. Here are some taikos that I didn't use. I think this is sound paint. I think I was like, yeah, I don't need them. And I think I added these dubstep drums afterwards. And then I was like, okay, I don't need any more taikos there. This is just a little stab kick. Noisia drum and bass kick, which is just following the melody basically. I also do that in basically every track. I notice I'm saying basically a lot. Need to make a mental note of that. I always give some extra power to the melody steps by just adding a little house kick or a little drum and bass kind of sample to give some more punch. Then there's just crashes, just reverb, EQ, nothing crazy. So there is a simple Reese in the background. Which is just a operator for the clean sub. And then a serum on top for the tone. I don't know if you can hear it, but this is just a sub. And then there's a serum for the gritty bass sound. With some pitch bending, of course. I also do that a lot. And then another Reese, which is a bit more dirty. And then with the drums together. Here you can see I put a little like a little accents to make it a bit more exciting. Otherwise it gets very static, I think. And then in the second half of the melody you get this little rolling bass. Which is very nice and stabby. That is the whole break part. The lead is also announced in the beginning. Let me check. Of course, without anything on top, it sounds a bit empty. But I just heard this. And that reminded me of why I use this filter channel. Because I had so many layers of leads, I wanted to do this little attack on the filter. That's just like a creative thing that I had in mind to do. It sounds very special, but it's just a little filter. But anyway, I thought I want to do a little wow filter there. So I thought, well, shit, I got 6 layers. I'm definitely not gonna adjust every synth on its own. So I just used a filter on the whole group, but then I was setting it up with this envelope thing. So it's basically listening to the input and then doing a little envelope. That didn't really work because there are so many layers and so many junk that's coming in. So what I did is I just routed the MIDI of the chords to a new channel. I put an operator on it. So a very simple sound that's distorting, but it's actually pretty nice. That doesn't matter because I muted the output and I'm just using this signal to feed into the sidechain of that filter. So as you can see here, I selected audio from filter. I would call it filter trigger. That makes a bit more sense. So it's just taking the audio of that operator, which is not heard, it's not audible, and it's using that to trigger that envelope. So that is just a quick workaround. It sounds complicated, but it's actually very simple. So let's say you have a big group with stabby synths. You can have 10 synths in a group, and you want to do a little envelope or automation with a filter or trigger something. Yeah, just route that to another synth that's tight and clean, and then use that signal for your filter sidechain. You can also do that with Volcano, for example. They also have sidechain inputs. But that was my way. I use that trick a lot to just trigger stuff with a clean signal. It's just a little workaround. And then here I'll probably use the shifter also in the build-up. So yeah, just to give some more accent in the pitching up. So I think I discussed everything regarding the leads. Let me double check. I think that's it. So that was the first video in this new YouTube series. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I could learn you a thing or two. Let me know in the comments if it was good, if I should explain more or less. If I'm rambling too much, then I can improve in the next video. As I said before, in the next one, we're going to do the vocals of this track. So I'll explain a bit behind the scenes of the writing part, the processing, how this all works, how it's used in the arrangement. I think I also did some vocal tricks in the mid-intro that I can explain. So I think that's definitely also going to be an exciting video. Please leave a little like and a subscribe if you find it useful. Drop any comments that you have, and I hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next video. Peace.